any options?
Yeah, free will is a very difficult question to answer for a physicist.
Are you happy with this?
In terms of free will, free will is a very troubling issue.
Well, you choose tonight to go to the movies, and I say, let's go to see Gone with the Wind. You say, no, let's go see Planet Xantar, Attack of the Return of the Devils of the She-Devils. Don't you like to think that you have a real choice there?
I'd love to think it. Do I know for a fact that the thought and the impression of free will is really real? No, I don't know that. In my heart, I tell you, I don't really know that. I suspect it's real because it feels so real. But there are so many things about the universe that we thought were real until we learned that they weren't.
But what I want to know about the future is that I'm in some control of it.
Yeah,
I want to fall in love because I want to fall in love. I want to step across the sidewalk in front of that car because I want to commit suicide, or whatever it is I want to do. And I don't want to have you or your pointy-headed friends telling me that it's already there and I'm going to somehow move from instant to instant, all pre-planned. Well, then the poetry disappears, then the magic disappears, and then most important of all, my command of myself disappears.
Let me give you an alternative that reinstates some of the poetry, some of the free will that you're longing for. And I long for the same thing.
And you don't.
I do. I absolutely do. And I feel like I have free will. I feel like I have the ability to choose my next word. I feel like I can do that. Do I really have that freedom? I don't know. I think I do, and perhaps that's enough. Just the illusion of the freedom. But anyway, let me paint an alternative but highly related scenario. In quantum theory, some have suggested the so-called many worlds interpretation, that the universe is not a single entity. There are many universes. We call them parallel universes. Each of the choices that you make is borne out in one of these copies.
All right, I'll give it to you. We're in a restaurant. I am sitting there, and it's time for dessert. The waiter approaches, and he says, would you like chocolate ice cream or vanilla? I think this over. If I choose vanilla, from then on, I'm in the
vanilla universe.
But if I choose chocolate, I'm in the chocolate universe.
Yes.
So all the consequences that flow from my vanilla, I say vanilla, and then somebody named Vanilla happens to come in, and I fall in love with vanilla, and I marry vanilla. We have our lovely vanillitos. But if I choose chocolate, I go into a mocha thing, and I suddenly am living in the Caribbean.
Right.
All right, so this is a real divider for me. Don't you see that this is like dumb? I mean, like, it's an easy...
When you say dumb, can you just be more precise? Because there are many criticisms of this picture, but I want to know which one you have in mind.
Well, the reason I think it's dumb is because it's like a pat solution. Like, you say, okay, since I can't get you free will the old way, what I'll do is I'll give you a lot of universes so you can have it all, baby. You can have the chocolate universe, you can have the vanilla universe.
No, a key thing is, this proposal, which was put forward in about 1957 by a guy named Hugh Everett, and then developed by many people, Bryce DeWitt and so on, was not put forward in order to restore anything to do with free will. These physicists, very high-powered, creative physicists, were studying quantum mechanics. And they came to a puzzle. If quantum theory says there's a 30% chance you're going to pick the vanilla ice cream, and say a 30% chance that you're going to pick the chocolate ice cream, and say a 40% chance that you're going to pick pistachio, and yet, when we look at the world and we look at what you do, you seem to choose one or the other. Where do the other possibilities that quantum theory said could happen, where do they go? Do they just disappear?
Yeah, they disappear.
Well, that is very hard to realize in the actual structure of quantum theory itself.
You mean that physicists, when they order chocolate, do they then think, had I chosen vanilla, my whole life could have been different?
No, they don't think that. They say to themselves, at least the fellas that believe, say, I chose vanilla in this world, but there's another version of me that's now eating chocolate.
You guys are very weird.
Well, hello there. It's been a long time.
Now, to be fair to Brian, at a quantum restaurant, at a kosher quantum restaurant that's really quantum...
Are there really such things?
Well, for the purpose of this argument, they will be.
Okay.
Waiters will deliver you closed lids of ice cream, and they won't tell you whether there's chocolate or vanilla. They're both in there, they'll say mysteriously. And you say, I think I'll have chocolate. Chocolate pops into existence, and vanilla goes away. So that's why quantum scientists wonder where things went, because there's a mystery here. But that's another story. I'm sure your head is spinning.
Yes, it is spinning.
My head is spinning. Do you feel it? It sometimes seems that Einstein was the point at which physics broke away from common sense. Everything you've just told me is utterly fascinating and at the same time utterly confusing. How do you live your life with knowing? Do you compartmentalize everything that you study in this office?
Well, late at night, I think about these things, and it gives you the willies. I do think about the fact that there's an alternate me out there, a clone of me, except I chose totally different life paths. And I can write down the equations for these alternate universes where I exist. In another universe, perhaps Elvis Presley is still alive. Oh, ain't it funny how time... I get asked that question, is Elvis Presley alive in one of these universes? At that point, I have to stop.
If this strikes you as a little too weird that there could be a bazillion Michios out there in the world, in various universes, doing various things all at once, one of them could be talking to me, but one of them could be talking simultaneously to Elvis.
One of them might be impersonating Elvis, because remember, in an infinite number of universes, you can do an infinite number of things.
But we should keep in mind this is still just speculation. And as particle physicist Lisa Randall likes to say,
I mean, there's a big difference between physics and philosophy. You let that go away, you sort of lost the great thing that is there in terms of physics, which is the ability to actually make testable predictions about the world.
Oh, wait a second. If she wants a testable prediction about the world, there have been experiments, and real science experiments. I'm thinking of one that was done in 1960 and was repeated over and over since then, that examined free will and time in a very interesting way. And by the way, this experiment created an uproar, especially among philosophers, because it's kind of a doozy. It involves finger wiggling. So could I have a little mood music, please? The scientists invited a group of people to come to the lab and sit down and have their brains monitored, and then according to the neurologist V.S. Ramachandran, they turned to their subjects.
And they said, and any time you wish, wiggle your finger.
that sounds easy enough.
Remember, by the way, that to wiggle your finger takes 2 steps. First, you have to decide to wiggle, then you wiggle. So you have to think it before you do it.
Which takes, what, like a tenth of or a millionth of a second or something?
Yeah, very short time. So you sit there, and you think, okay, now I'm going to wiggle. However, when they did this experiment, and they looked back at the graphs of all the brains of the people who did this,
What they found was your sensation that you asked your finger to wiggle, your sensation, your will, came a second after the brain kicked in.
if you looked at my brain waves when I was wiggling my finger, Chad, here's what you'd see. First, you'd see my brain getting ready to wiggle. There's a spike, or a blip, as Ramachandran would say. That's my brain getting ready. And then second, you'd get a second spike showing the wiggle. So there's a blip for getting ready, yeah, and then there's a blip for wiggle. Now, logic would tell you the way this should go is first I decide to wiggle, then my brain gets ready, and then my brain wiggles, right? But when they looked, what actually happens is before I decide to wiggle, before, my brain mysteriously is already getting ready.
Even though you think you're willing the brain to do something, it's your brain that's willing you to will. It's thinking ahead of you, and then your so-called thinking is